Hello and welcome back to the TCM YouTube channel where we are continuing our 2023 previews of the county season. And next up, we are heading down to London and Lords as we look at Middlesex for the 2023 season. And joining us to do so in his Middlesex attire is Middlesex fan Ricky. Ricky, thank you for joining us. First off, how excited are you for the 2023 season?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's great to be with you. Really excited as a Middlesex fan and member. Really excited to be back in Division One in the Championship this year, and fancy our chances with the White Ball squad as well. So yeah, very excited as a Middlesex fan.
Absolutely. And obviously, last year, you just mentioned there, you got promoted from Division 2 of the County Championship. We like to start with a bit of a reflection on last year. So, eighth in the Vitality Blast and fourth in Group A of the One Day Cup, alongside that promotion in the County Championship. I wonder how you reflect on last season. Now you've had a bit of time to let it stew in your head.
Yeah, the One Day Cup was a real. It was tough to take, to be honest with you. We were top of the group for a long way through it. If I remember correctly, testing my memory now, but Stevie Eskenazi, I think, hit 300s in 3 games or something like that right at the start. And we were flying high. I think we won 3 or 4 of the first games and quite convincingly as well. And it looked like we were going to go through and just sail through into the semi-finals. We only lost, I think it was 7 players to the 100, which was quite low compared to other counties. And it looked like we had a very strong squad, good depth. We were doing okay in the red ball stuff and sort of transferred our form into the white ball. Then we lost a couple of tight games and we went down to Hove, I think it was, in the last game, needing to win to go through, and we came up short. And it was disappointing because at one point it looked like we were gonna do well in that competition. And Middlesex haven't won much silverware recently. And obviously, a big club. Yes, we got promotion last year, but in terms of actual winning trophy, I think T20 Blast we won in 2008. I don't think we won anything since then. Obviously, won the championship in 2016, but in terms of white ball competition, so that was a real disappointment. The Vitality Blast, yeah, the less said about Middlesex's form in the last few years, and that is probably the better. We did well. I think it was maybe 2018, 2019. We got to I remember going up to Nottinghamshire on a really cold night for a quarter final against Notts. Again, we got absolutely battered. I remember Chris Nash and Alex Hales chased it down a decent score. They won by 10 wickets. So yeah, that was the only highlight of a not great T20 Blast campaign the last few years. But yeah, the Red Bull stuff's been pretty good. Obviously got promotion last year. I think everyone would agree, well, maybe not everyone, but most people would agree that Middlesex are a big club, obviously play at Lords, probably belong in Division 1. And it'll be great to be back in Division 1 this season.
Well, let's not dwell on the past too much. Let's look ahead to the future. And in terms of the off season, you've not made too many signings here and about, but you've got Ryan Higgins coming in from Gloucestershire. In terms of the side you've got going into 2023, I wonder whether you think there should have been more signings in the off season, whether you think that Ryan Higgins is going to make a big impact on your side. Where do you stand on signings and stuff like that for Middlesex?
Yeah, we got dealt a bit of a blow last week. We'd signed Kishav Maharaj from South Africa. He played at Yorkshire a couple of years ago, and he was due to come in. We're light on the spin front. We used to have a friend of mine actually played Middlesex, Ravi Patel. He moved on a few years ago. Nathan Souter's moved on now as well. So we're quite light with just Walla Lawita as a frontline spinner. So Maharaj would have been a good addition there. In terms of Higgins, he was one that I was sad to see go when he went to Gloucestershire 4 or 5 years ago, and it'd be great to have him back. I think he's a great link in that middle order. He'll bat at 7, I would have thought. John Simpson bats at 6. He had a good year in the championship last year, scored over 1,000 runs. So at 6, he's pretty solid. And then at 7, to have someone like Higgins who can open the bowling or come on first change, however he sees to be, he's a useful championship bowler, more than useful, I'd say. And then obviously he can score runs as well. In the Red Bull format. So he will be a great addition. Having said that, there's a young guy called Martin Anderson who was playing that role. Whether or not there's space for both of them in the side, is unlikely looking at the balance of the side. But Anderson was really showing some potential. So he may feature, he may not. There may be injuries, who knows? But that lower middle order, I'd imagine it will be Max Holden at 5, who played every game in every competition for Middlesex last season. So he's someone that they clearly rate. Simpson at 6, Higgins at 7, and then into the bowlers with the new captain, Roland Jones, probably batting 8.
And you mentioned, it's like you know my questions. You mentioned Roland Jones there. Obviously, he's integral for Middlesex, and he bowled 475 overs in the county championship last year, taking 67 wickets. He's quite the player, and he has been for some times. Are you worried that captaincy will affect him a bit, or do you think he's just the sort of player who's going to take it on the chin and continue bowling like an absolute gun?
Yeah, it was almost like having a new signing last year because he didn't play much the 2 seasons previous due to injury. He got into the England side, if you remember, back in 2016 off the back of an unbelievable season when we won the championship. And he'd never had an injury up to that point that I can remember. And it looked like he was just going to play for England for the next 5 years. I think he got a 5 for-on debut against South Africa. He's a really top player. Then he got injured. And then having him back this year, like you say, 67 wickets in the championship, he was really unbelievable. Will captaincy affect him? You're not going to know until it comes to it. It didn't affect Tim Murtagh last year. Again, there was questions raised having a bowler as captain. You think, is that going to work? Obviously, Ben Stokes does it for England as an all-rounder, and he bowls himself less in that role. But obviously, you want Roland Jones opening the bowling and bowling lots of overs. I think he trusts his body, having got through a whole season last year. So you'd like to think that, this year he'll bowl himself when it's necessary. But we are a seam strong attack in terms of, you've still got Murtagh knocking around as a player coach. We've got Tom Helm, Blake Cullen, who they think very highly of, Ethan Bamber, obviously Martin Anderson or Ryan Higgins ever plays that. So there is seam options there. So he doesn't need to bowl and bowl and bowl and bowl. So I think it's fine to have a seam bowler as captain when you've got that many options. If you've only got 2 or 3, quality seamers, you don't really want one of them burdened with captaincy. But we have a lot that can share the workload. So I'm absolutely fine. I think it's a great role for him. I think he'll be great at it, and I think we'll be absolutely fine in Div 1, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how you challenge for those top spaces alongside, the likes of Hampshire, Lancashire, Surrey, etc. Someone I want to talk about is Owen Morgan, because obviously he's retired now and he's left Middlesex. And I wonder whether you think he'll actually have much of an impact at all on your Middlesex side, because he hasn't been known to play much domestic cricket for Middlesex in the past few years, rightly or wrongly, obviously adding the captaincy, franchise leagues, etc. Do you think not having him there will be an impact at all on this Middlesex team in the 2023 season?
Well, obviously he hasn't played red ball cricket for a while, so in that competition it won't make any difference. He probably wasn't even around the red ball squad. You would have thought. Obviously, I don't know his schedule and how often he was there in the gym or behind the scenes, but you wouldn't have thought he'd been around much. In the white ball game, I do think we'll miss him. I went to 4 or 5 games at Radlett last year where he actually did turn out for Middlesex. I think there was a couple where he couldn't play back-to-back days or games that were very close together. He wanted to manage his workload and that, but he even though he didn't score the weight of runs for Middlesex in the last few years that he obviously had done previously for us and for England, it just having him around. Eskenazi was captain in that last year, but you saw him constantly going to Morgan, constantly talking to one another. Obviously, you've got that wealth of experience, World Cup winning captain. He transformed England's white ball cricket, and you can't put a price on the value of that behind the scenes. Obviously, he won't be around, and they would have played plenty of games where he hasn't been around and haven't been able to turn to him. But I do feel there's like almost a safety blanket there when he's around the squad, which obviously won't be there this year. And maybe that was one of the reasons why we did disappoint down at Hove. If I remember correctly, he wasn't there, and maybe had he been there, you might have got a different result. So listen, we'll have to wait and see. But that's been on the cards for a while, and as you say, he's played less and less for Middlesex, so it hopefully won't be something that affects us too badly.
Yeah, and obviously enjoy retirement, Owen. So someone else who came through a bit last season, just on the fringes, is Michael Atherton's son, Josh De Cares. I wonder what you think he's going to do this season, whether he'll have an impact, and what other youngsters do Middlesex have coming through the ranks who are going to maybe make an impact this season?
Josh De Cares is a massive talent, a massive talent. He scored, if I remember rightly, 80 odd opening the batting at Lords on a really difficult track. It wasn't one where we got 500 and everyone got runs. It was a low scoring first innings, I think, and he got 80 odd, and he really looked the real deal last year. Now, obviously, he may struggle to get into the side. We've got a very experienced opening partnership with Stoneman and Robson in the Red Bull game, and obviously Robson a couple of years ago was before this sort of Bazball revolution was being talked about to go to Australia on that Ashes trip where we lost last winter. So he was close to knocking on that door. So Robson, you'd feel, was a shoe-in, senior player, been around for a while, England pedigree. The same with Stoneman, who obviously came across from Surrey. He's been an England opener, and you'd think that those two are going to open the batting. Obviously, injury may affect that, but otherwise, so De Gea, yeah, he could possibly bat in the middle order. Although we have Peter Milan back from South Africa. Obviously, you mentioned Holden, who played every game last year. Eskenazi. So the middle order is pretty packed as well, and I hope he does get a chance, both red ball and white ball, because he is a serious talent, and I think he's the future of Middlesex. So it would be interesting to see how much cricket he does play. But every time he plays in the second 11, he seems to score runs. You know, he's one of those that's almost too good for second 11 cricket, and maybe not quite there for first 11 cricket. But he's not going to get there if he doesn't play. It'd be interesting to see if he goes out on loan. I remember Max Holden went to Northants a few years ago when we were in a similar position with him. He was too good to not be playing, but couldn't get in the Middlesex side, and came back and has sort of been great ever since. So that may happen as well with the Cares. In terms of other youngsters, the one that really excites all Middlesex fans, I think, when you see someone with talent and pace, is Blake Cullen. May have seen a bit of him in the 100 for London Spirit. He got picked up at the age of like 19 or whatever. But he's the one. He missed a lot of last season with a stress fracture in the back, and it was a real disappointment for Middlesex. But if we can get him back firing, keep him fit, get him on the park, bowl plenty of overs. Obviously, he's so young. He's very raw. He's going to develop, but he is someone that, as a Middlesex fan, you just want to see bowl in the Middlesex colours. There are some other youngsters. Max Holden, I don't think, can be considered a youngster anymore. Martin Anderson possibly as well. There's in the white ball side, there's Max Harris, played a little bit last year, Toby Greetwood as well, and they will benefit. Obviously, if other players go off and play in the 100, they'll step in, and I'm sure they'll do a great job. But for me, it's De Gea, like you mentioned, and Cullen. They're the two that are really first team quality that could be banging on the door.
Absolutely, and it'd be great to see how they develop across this season and in the years to come. Let's have a word then on Steve Eskenazi, because you mentioned earlier averaging 94 in the One Day Cup last year, in phenomenal form as a white ball captain. How do you think he'll go this season? What do you think his prospects are for captaincy and just for batting in general?
I think obviously he went off and played in the Big Bash and won the Big Bash with Perth Scorchers in the winter. How he doesn't get a gig in the 100 is beyond me. He's been Middlesex leading run scorer in the T20 blast for the last 3 seasons, if not more. He's a fantastic talent. He scored 70 odd on his England Lions debut last year against South Africa, I think it was. As I said, went off and played some franchise cricket in the winter, so I'm sure he will get picked up by a 100 side, which is obviously Middlesex's loss, but for him, it's great to see him do that. I think he actually broke into the side as a red ball player, and he got into the team through sheer weight of runs. He scored so many runs in the twos, went up to the first team, and his debut season in the first 11, he scored some hundreds and did really well. He hasn't kicked on in red ball cricket recently, and I'm hoping he does, because he's got such a serious amount of talent that I think once he gets a couple of big scores in red ball cricket, he'll start churning out the scores non-stop. He also got injured at the start of last season, which didn't help him, and lost a bit of fluency. I think he actually scored 100 in the first innings and got injured fielding in the second innings, and obviously he possibly would have kicked on there at that point as well. But as a captain, he's fantastic. He's calm. He leads by example. As you said, he got averaging 90 odd in the One Day Cup. That's what you want the captain to do, lead from the front. And they were quick runs as well. I don't know his strike rate, but it was well over 100, if not 120, 130. So he gets us off to an absolute flyer. And he's not a brute of a player. One of those big guys that clears the rate. He's not that guy. He's a touch player. He's got some great shots, plays all around the wicket. If you saw him in Big Bash, he scoops, he reverse scoops. He played some unbelievable strokes last year. And he is someone that has come through. He's been with Middlesex since I think 2015, and he's someone that I always kept an eye out for in the winter. Who's he playing for? Is he getting runs? And as a Middlesex fan, you just want someone like that to just conquer it all, really. To be honest.
Yeah, it's really good to hear that he's the club through and through, it sounds like by now. Let's turn a bit more broader then. And I want you to pin down for me who you'd pick as your one to watch this season. Who's the one player who you think county fans across the country and fans of Middlesex should be looking out for?
Well, it's hard to look past the players that we've mentioned in terms of Eskenazi, Roland Jones, Higgins, Blake Cullen, but another one that should be on that list who did play. I think he played for England. I think he played. I think they might have even won the 100 last year. I can't remember who won it. But Tom Helm is someone that you need to keep an eye on. He's just signed a long-term deal with Middlesex for another 3 years or so. He's been in England squads, and I think he played in that Pakistan series, if I'm not mistaken. When they had to replace the whole squad
Yeah,
because of
I
COVID.
think he did. Yeah.
And he's someone who is a great white ball talent and bowls really well at the death. He's got good slower balls, good change ups. Hasn't quite mastered it in red ball cricket, but if he gets it right, he's got so much talent that he could be someone to watch. And someone who I really like watching is Ethan Bamber. He's also a young kid still. He's only 23, 24, I think. He played in the county 11 last year against the touring side. I can't remember if it was South Africa or India, but he represented the county 11 and he has done so before. He constantly bowls an economy rate of 2 point something in the county championship. He keeps it tight, bowls wicket to wicket, really tight. He picks up wickets, bowls very straight, bowled well in. He played a lot of white ball cricket last year, which was a surprise to some of the fans, but he did well in that as well. And he's someone that obviously England have got so many fast bowlers at the moment that they can call upon, but actually in the long run, I wouldn't be surprised to see Ethan Bamber with an England cap or even more, because he is a serious talent. And he's obviously learning from Tim Murtagh, Toby Roland Jones. He's got great role models. He's spent a lot of time with Steve Finn as well, who's obviously moved on now. And I can see him representing England in the future.
Well, definitely one to keep an eye on, and
Yeah.
that's great. Let's turn to some predictions then, and I like to pin down fans and jinx them, let them jinx their teams in advance of the 2023 season. So we'll go through each competition, and if you could just give us a rough estimate, doesn't have to be exact if you want, but as rough as you can of where you think they're gonna finish. Let's start with the county championship then. Where do you think Middlesex are going to finish in Division 1?
It's so tough. There's some such strong teams in Division 1 this year. I don't think we'll be in. I don't think we'll be challenging for the title, unfortunately. But I don't think we'll be too far off it. I can see us finishing fourth, mid-table. At one point, maybe being in with a shout of winning it, but not quite getting there. Maybe falling just short. But I don't think we'll be struggling with relegation.
That's a good thing. Good to hear that you're optimistic about not struggling with relegation. Let's turn to the Vitality Blast. Obviously, we said you became 8th last year in that South group. Do you think you're going to do better this year? Do you think there's a chance of pushing towards finals day?
As much as I'd love to say yes, sadly, I think the championship will take a lot out of the players. I know it's almost two different squads these days, but the championship is going to be the focus. Being back in Division 1 for the first time in a while, I don't think the Vitality Blast is going to be great for us. Unfortunately, I'd love to be proven wrong. Obviously, I don't think we have enough power hitters in our side. You look at our side; they're very much touch players, and which is fine when we're playing at Radlett, which is a small ground. And actually, if you just beat the infield, it's 4 almost every time, if not, and it's quite easy to score sixes there. And we had some scores of 230, 240, whatever last year, but they were chased down because the other side can do the same. And I think, unfortunately, our squad is just not quite ready for the Vitality Blast this year. But like I said, hopefully I'm wrong.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that comes out in the end. Maybe you'll be proven wrong, hopefully, for you. And then the One Day Cup, finally, we said 4th in Group A. You mentioned they had a great run of form and they sort of tailed off. Do you think they can do one better? Obviously, a lot of teams will be impacted by the 100. You don't know how Middlesex are going to be impacted just yet. Are you optimistic about their chances in the One Day Cup? Do you think they're most likely to progress to a winning stage of this competition?
Yeah, I think the One Day Cup's the one for us that we have a real chance of winning this year. Like I said, last year we only lost 7 players to the 100. It may be a few more this year. You'd expect Eskenazi to go, but you just don't know. But yeah, I think the One Day Cup is a real chance for us to get some silverware this year. And there even there are some players that we know definitely aren't going to play in the 100. You know, Stoneman, Robson, those guys, they're not going to the 100. And we have enough young talent. Joe Cracknell, who kept wicket in that competition for us last year while Simpson was off, and some other youngsters as well, that we have enough talent there that I think we should be challenging in that one.
Fantastic. Well, it's a positive note to end on. Ricky, thank you very much for joining us. And thank you as well for watching at home. And we'll see you next time.